Everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPhone 16 and compare it against the iPhone 14 Pro Max and see which particular phone is a better one for you. Now, this is very interesting because the iPhone 16, although it is the newest and latest and greatest from Apple right now, it is still very interesting because the iPhone 14 Pro Max, which came out a couple of years ago, is actually probably better than the iPhone 16 in a few different ways. Now, we'll take a look at both those things throughout this whole entire video. But if you want to go and pick up any one of these phones that I'm going to go and recommend throughout this whole entire video, links will be down in the description for the cheapest prices I find. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these particular devices, the iPhone 14 Pro Max, which came out back in 2022, on the front side of this phone is giving you a 6.7-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display. Now, there's a few things to keep in mind within this particular panel. It's a bigger size screen than the iPhone 16. It's still maintaining a dynamic island and everything like that. You are kind of getting thicker bezels overall on the iPhone 14 Pro Max a little bit than the 16. It's not even that big of a deal, but you will kind of notice it a little bit. Beyond that though, the best thing about the iPhone 14 Pro Max is that it's giving you an always-on display and it's giving you ProMotion display as well. Those are some really big things to keep in mind within this type of phone. And if you are going to go through and pick up a device, that is once again a very big asset. Being able to go through buy a phone like the iPhone 14 Pro Max that's going to be giving you that type of capability, in my opinion, it's a very nice thing to have. And I am a massive fan of that for sure, without a doubt. So that, without a doubt, is probably one of my most favorite things going on for the 14 Pro Max is that type of panel. Now beyond that, the iPhone 16 is going to be giving you a 6.1-inch Super Retina XDR OLED display. So this type of panel is still great. You know, it's still giving you dynamic island. It gets brighter than the 14 Pro Max and there's a little bit less bezel on it. So that's kind of a nice thing. But beyond that, there's not really anything else super crazy going on with this type of phone. And it is kind of a more basic type of panel when it comes down to it. Nothing super crazy, but it's a good enough panel and it kind of gets the job done for the most part. So from that side as well, that kind of covers it up there too. They're both giving you flat sides. The iPhone 16 is giving you the action button and the camera button, which again, as always, is a super nice thing to have. There's not really anything else super insane, like I said before, that we haven't already seen before on both. The only big thing I can think about is the iPhone 16 is giving you USB Type-C. So that is a really nice thing to have. Having USB-C is really cool. The 14 Pro Max is giving you Lightning, and I will tell you, jumping up to USB-C is a very big upgrade. I absolutely love having USB Type-C. And it is a massive difference coming from Lightning almost every single day of the week you can imagine. So that is, I would say, another very big deal going on here as well. Now, on top of that, some other big things to keep in mind here too. With something like the iPhone 16 and with the iPhone 14 Pro Max on the backside, frosted glass backs on both. So that is always something really nice to have. I love having frosted glass backs. And you're basically going to be getting that capability on both as well, which that again is a very nice thing going on here too. Now, on top of that, another very big thing is that with the iPhone 16 and the 14 Pro Max, they're both giving you camera setups, triple cam on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, dual camera setup on the iPhone 16, wireless charging on both, MagSafe capability on both, IP certification on both. That's kind of the big differences I can kind of think about here. They're both very good, beautiful phones. I like the way they both look a lot, but if you are pretty much going to go ahead and pick up one, I would probably say the iPhone 14 Pro Max is probably the better one on the outside, just because of the ProMotion display and just the, always on display as well, in my opinion. But the 16 has USB-C, so it is kind of a flip-flop here. Price tag wise, the 14 Pro Max probably costs the same, if not a little bit cheaper than the iPhone 16. So that is probably one thing to keep in mind here too. Like if you're wanting the phone that's going to be giving you the overall cheaper type of experience, it might end up being something like an iPhone 16. It might end up being something like an iPhone 14 Pro Max and not the iPhone 16. So that right there could be another thing to kind of think about there too. Again, just a small slight thing you're going to notice when it comes down to these devices as well. Now, when it comes down to the camera side of things, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is giving you a triple camera setup, a wide ultra-wide telephoto lens, where the iPhone 16 is basically giving you this dual camera setup, a wide and ultra-wide camera. Now, they both can film in 4K at 60 on the front and the back, which as always is a really nice thing to have. There's not really too many crazy differences here. The main difference you're going to see is that you're going to be getting 3x zoom on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, where you're only getting 2x zoom on the 16. Still, it's a good thing, there's not really, too many differences there, but it's still nice to have more zooming in. On top of that, I think with the iPhone 16, you are getting the spatial photos and videos. The iPhone 14 Pro Max doesn't quite have that. Is it a big deal? No, I haven't really used it that much besides to test it. And it's a nice thing, but it's not really that big of a difference either. Beyond that though, they're both very good phones. Like, don't get me wrong, I like having both these devices, but there really isn't anything super insane that I would look at between both. And I would think to myself like, oh, this iPhone is way better than the other one from a camera standpoint. I don't really see it. Both of them share a lot more similarity than differences. And I think that's kind of how I see both these devices holding up from that particular perspective. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there too. Now, on top of that, another very big thing to keep in mind here as well is with the software longevity. So there's a very high likelihood that a device like the iPhone 14 Pro Max is probably not going to last as long as the iPhone 16. So that's what kind of tends to happen with some of these types of devices. Like when you're looking at some of these types of phones, a device like the iPhone 14 Pro Max may actually not end up lasting as long as something like the iPhone 16, which is totally understandable, and that's kind of what ends up happening here. So if you are going to go through and like get a certain device, definitely something like the iPhone 14 Pro Max might not be the one that's going to last the longest, but with that being said, it's still going to be a long-lasting phone. Both these phones are still going to be getting software updates for many, many years now, and you don't really have too much to complain about there from that side. So if you're trying to still figure out which one's going to be giving you the longer lasting device, I think both these phones are going to be lasting for long periods of time, and you generally don't have too much to worry about when it comes down to that side either. In terms of battery, in terms of long lasting battery life, both these phones are still going to be lasting for a long period of time for battery, but on their own website, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is giving you 29 hours of video playback, where the iPhone 16 is giving you 22 hours of video playback. So this is again another big difference here. If you are wanting the phone that's going to be giving you the longer lasting battery, could be the iPhone 14 Pro Max here, which is also a very interesting thing going on with this particular device as well. Now when it comes down to the performance, this could be another big difference too. So with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, this phone is giving you the Apple A16 Bionic chip inside, where the iPhone 16 is giving you the Apple A18 chip. Now there's a RAM increase with the iPhone 16 as well, so you are theoretically seeing and getting a bigger, better battery life on something like the iPhone 16. You are getting a bigger, better performing phone on the iPhone 16 than the 14 Pro Max. Bigger in terms of RAM and a better, performing chipset. So that is another big asset for that type of device too. Like if you're looking at a phone from that particular perspective, you are definitely going to be getting an overall better performing device on something like the iPhone 16 than the 14 Pro Max. So what I can probably tell you in my personal opinion, in almost every single way I can imagine, a device like the iPhone 14 Pro Max is probably going to be the overall better performing device here than the iPhone 16. So what I could probably tell you is that the iPhone 16 in a majority of ways is probably the better performing device than the iPhone 14 Pro Max, right? I love the 14 Pro Max for basically giving us that type of build quality, for giving us that type of chipset. I think it's a really good device, and I definitely do like having a phone like the iPhone, 14 Pro Max, because you are getting the promotion display and everything like that. I think those are really important things to have. But I think with something like the iPhone 16, this is probably the overall better performing device, just from a quality standpoint, without having to, with it being the longer lasting device and being the better phone. But I probably will tell you, if you are wanting the better device here, it probably is going to be the iPhone 16. But if you have a 14 Pro Max, this phone could overall be a better one in some ways as well. So in terms of that kind of covers it up here as well. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.